Hello there. So at the time of me recording this, or uploading really, this will have been my first YouTube video on this channel. And I thought I'd just kind of do something that gives a good idea of what I like to do, right? So I'm talking about this manga, this, weird whatever manga, and I'm doing it with Team Fortress 2 footage in the background. It's Sniper, the main character of the manga is a sniper. It's a cute little thing, whatever. So yeah, I'm talking about this manga called Alice in Hell. That's the English name, at least. I'm just gonna call it that. So, some of you who are really into manga may know Frisia. It's like a somewhat popular underground manga, right? And just even saying that name kind of like, some people are like, oh, that's cool. Some people are like, oh, no. And yeah, I'll talk about why later, because it also, it's important for talking about this one as well, but this is by the same guy who did Frisia. And so you may be thinking, this is a manga that's like Frisia, right? And in some ways, yeah. In many ways, actually, yeah. But in a lot of other ways, it's very different. Anyway, the main kind of plot of this, you have this main character named Shu. He's like a really talented young sniper. And he saves this lady named Matilda, and then he's invited to go to this colony, because they're in the apocalypse, right? It's an apocalyptic setting. So he's invited to go to this colony by Matilda, to live there. And he does so for entirely, practical reasons, not even because he wants to be around people, because he lives all alone with his doll named Alice, right? And from there you have this whole thing where a little bit of just misadventures, but Alice kind of becomes the center of this whole chase for, water, basically, and resources in the colony. The story is pretty simple, but when I reread it, I could see where things were definitely planned out. There was a plan, and it works very well. It's pretty well paced as well, because if we're gonna compare it to Frisia, that one is 12 volumes, right? And we have Alice in Hell, which is 6 volumes, right? So it's definitely well paced, and it doesn't really outstay its welcome. It gets a lot across with its time, and it's not the shortest manga, but still. So I'll just jump in and talk about my favorite aspect, which is the main character Shu, right? And Shu is a very interesting character for many reasons. In fact, and this always sounds edgy to say stuff like this, but he really is the villain of this manga. Shu becomes this shut-in, right, with the doll that could save humanity, but he just becomes a shut-in even despite that, and this opportunity to grow and let humanity flourish is kind of lost because of that. So he is a villain, and you don't really even necessarily realize that until the end. So you're seeing this basically an origin story for a villain, and why he gets there and stuff like that. And it does a good job at showing you why he's like that for many reasons. So I think one of the things that sticks out to me about the manga immediately is the comics and manga references. And they're all pretty popular, right? Because you have, there's 3 really. You have Dragon Ball, everyone knows that. You have Fist of the North Star. Most people know that. And then you have The Walking Dead, which is an American comic. Some people are like, oh, well, that's just referencing popular stuff and, cool stuff. Why is that good? Well, I think that it's saying a lot with that. Because, like I said, Shu is a shut-in, right? And when you have him and he talks about how he loves manga, and he has this doll, basically, right? This robot that's like this girl, and she comforts him and stuff. I think it's kind of a take on basically this otaku, right? This weeaboo. And the only difference is that he is insane and kills a bunch of people, which is, a big difference, but still. So I think it's saying something about that kind of culture and how it could, ruin people who, could do a lot of great things, because, like I said, Shu is very talented at sniping. He's extremely talented, right? Which I think it works fine for the story, because like I said, he's a villain. So, And other than that, there's also the fact that this is kind of just putting Dragon Ball to the side, you know. But Fizz the North Star and The Walking Dead, they're very much also apocalyptic stories. And especially for Fizz the North Star, I think the parallels are interesting because in Fizz the North Star, you have this dude, Kinshiro, right, who goes around, you know, places. He's a loner, right, and he, you know, kills bad guys, you know, pretty mercilessly a lot of the times. And this isn't me like criticizing Fizz the North Star or anything, but he does this, right, and I think that this is kind of like a statement on how media can influence young people. And you know, I'm not saying that video games cause violence or anything, but you know, like, you know, if someone says like, you know, this character is cool, like Kenshiro's cool, that also means that to them, the fact that he kills people is cool, right? And so you have this main character, Shu, who sees this guy, Kenshiro, who's supposed to be very cool for doing these things, and he, to an extent, he glorifies him, and he tries to follow in his footsteps by becoming someone like that. Obviously, he doesn't do the magic punches with the pressure points, but he snipes people, he kills people. And I think that's very interesting how you have that commentary as a deeper layer. Other than that, I think there's basically this midsection of the story which goes over Shu's backstory, right? And it's very interesting seeing kind of a lot of the reasons he is the way he is, because he was brought up by this father, right, who was abusive. He never let Shu choose anything for himself. Anytime Shu tried to do even the most like trivial thing, like choose the most trivial thing, he would be berated and, you know, all that bad stuff. Because of that, Shu basically just begins to go crazy. You know, obviously he kind of hates his dad for all this, but he also cares about him at the end of the day. And even at the end, he kills his dad. And this also kind of solidifies him as someone who he was never really given the ability to choose for himself what to do, so he's just following in his dad's footsteps. So it's really just a very, in a lot of ways, it's a tragic story, right? But it's also, you know, it's also has good moments, and that's what really makes it even more tragic. Because you do see in the middle of the story, Shu begin to kind of connect with people. You know, he has friends. He has people who could be his friends, at least. He has people he cares about and saves and stuff like that. And even the, you know, who could be considered the villain but really isn't, Kenji, is determined to make Shu, you know, a good guy. But then Shu kills him, you know, and it just makes it very sad, right? So that's really, I think, the focal point of this manga is just that level of characterization given to our protagonist. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's really all you need to make at least a good manga. Maybe you need more for a great manga, usually. And I'm not sure if I'd say that this manga is great, but it is good. Because I do think a lot of the other characters are missing something to really make them notable. Because you have, like, Elsa, for example. She's a pretty significant supporting character. And she's alright. You learn a bit about her backstory. And, you know, that plays into her character. She's cool. Matilda, who I mentioned earlier, she's cool. There's really just not much to say about her, right? She's a decent personality. Alice is a non-character, which I understand why someone would take issue with that, right? But I think it works for this story, for what it's going for. Kenji is probably the best character aside from Shu, just because near the end, his place in the story matters the most. He's the one that's driven the most. He actually has a goal, kind of, compared to all the other characters. And really, those are the main characters, aside from, like, Shu's dad, who is also a pretty major character. So I think from the story, that's mostly what I'd want to talk about. So now we'll talk about the visuals. And this is one aspect, you know, another aspect where Frieza and Alton are very similar. Because if you've read Frieza, or you read any of his manga, you know, he has a very rough visual style, right? Unpolished to an extent, right? That's no different here. It's very unpolished. A lot of detail to an extent, right? Because he does drop backgrounds a lot. There's a lot given to them, but it's very unpolished. And that's not necessarily a bad thing all the time. But there are those instances where, you know, something looks a little off. You know, the character's head just looks a little weird. You know, the details just don't look quite right. And, you know, that's whatever. It's not enough in this case where I think that it's a big deal. It's a pretty well-drawn manga for the most part. I really like how when Shu snipes someone, a lot of times it's just their head's just gone. Like it's showing how immediate this killing is, and it's very visceral in a lot of ways. And even aside from that, you know, you have the way the visuals tell like the story, because Matsumoto as an artist cares a lot about symbolism. I kind of talked about that with the Dragon Ball, Fist of the North Star stuff. But you also have these parts where the main character Shu sees, you know, people as bottles. And the reason it's like this is because when his dad was teaching him to snipe, he was like, oh, you know, shoot these bottles, right? So it's showing Shu's kind of descent into disconnecting from people, where he sees people as just, oh, they're just targets. They're not really real people. And it's really great. It's, you know, gets you thinking about, like, you know, Shu's mindset. It's really cool stuff. And then, you know, just a few chapters later, it's just, there's a bunch of the most, like, awful, like, sexual, perverted stuff you've ever seen. And this is the big thing with this manga and Jiro Matsumoto as a whole, because while he can very much tell a great story in a lot of ways, he also inserts a lot of sexual and gory stuff into his works. And some of it does work. I'm not gonna lie, some of it has a purpose. But then there's other stuff where it just doesn't. And this manga has a few scenes where there's very graphic stuff that just does not really have a purpose. And I'm not gonna lie and say it does. And that makes it hard to recommend it, right? Because if you don't want to see that, you don't want to see that, no matter how great it is. There's people that, you know, don't want to read Berserk for that, right? Berserk is, at least for a bit, a great manga. I'm not gonna get into that, but people just don't always want to see that because it can be upsetting. And that's really the biggest thing I have against this manga. I've talked about the characters, some aren't great. I can nitpick a few details. You know, some moments are just kind of weird, seem kind of just edgy for the sake of it. There's kind of this whole thing where it's kind of like a plot hole, I guess. You could, I guess, write it off some way. But, you know, Shu's dad, Shu's adopted, and he's like, they're like, oh, this kid's like a gifted sniper. Somehow they know that he's a gifted sniper because of the way he does something. I don't remember. And then, you know, later, Shu's dad is surprised, and everyone's surprised at how good he is at sniping. But it's like, you picked him up because he was a gifted sniper. What's up with that? So that's, like, you know, a dumb thing. You can maybe just say that the dude's abusive and he didn't care that he was gifted or whatever. I don't know. And that also just kind of extends into the general thing where a lot of Matsumoto manga, a lot of the manga by this guy, kind of just starts to become a little too blunt, a little too I don't want to say sappy, because they're not really sappy. Like, this manga isn't really sappy, but it's laying on a little too thick near the end. Not that much, but a little bit too much. But in general, I do think it's a very well written manga that explores a lot of the ideas of, like, isolationism and how that can affect people and how it can hurt the world in general. It's a really good manga, honestly. And if you can, you know, stomach those graphic scenes, I do recommend you give it a shot. I would say that this is my second favorite Jiro Matsumoto manga, and Frisia is not my first, so I'll let you guys speculate about which is my first. So just a bit of, you know, whatever at the end now. I just want to say thank you for watching my first video. I assume that most of you who are watching this either are A, one of my friends, or B, just really like this manga, or really you think it's interesting and you wanted to see someone talk about it. Because couldn't really find many people talking about this manga online. You can find people talking about Frisia and a lot of other obscure manga. Haven't found really much about this one. I found like an edit or something, but no one talking about it, and I think that's disappointing. So if you want to see videos on underrated manga, maybe some movies, maybe some games, whatever I want to do, really. But a lot of it will be manga that's underrated. I will probably do at least a few more videos about Jiro Matsumoto's manga. I will do some for sure about Takahashi Tsutomu's manga. I think his most popular work is Back One Rotao. Inio Asano will probably be here. And if you have a specific manga you want me to talk about, there's a good chance I've read it. Because I read a lot of manga. So just go in the comments and say, hey, I want you to talk about this. And, you know, maybe I haven't read it and I do read it. Maybe I just don't want to read it. Maybe I will for you, at least a little bit. But, you know, just give it a shot and you may be pleasantly surprised, you know. So please subscribe to see more. Like the video, comment, because you know that I'm a new channel, so that's the best way to get it moving. Share the video to your friends. Actually, I don't know. They might not want to see this video about this, you know, weird manga. They judge you, be like, well, what do you like this manga or whatever. But yeah, try the manga. And if you don't like it, then you can come here and tell me why you hated it. You know, whatever. I want people to talk about it. I think it makes it interesting. Anyway, goodbye, and until next time, have a good day, or night. I don't know what time it is where you are, so.